Welcome to the Six-Figure Author Experiment, where we help you break through your first or next $100,000 goal. Parental discretion is advised. Now, let's get on with the show.
Okay, so I want to talk about I've been saying all year that I will not know how this year is going until the end of June, when all of this stuff. So to give you a kind of overview, overall for all of my companies last year, I made 400 grand, which is easily the biggest that I've made of any time. It was great. And then in January, my biggest client, who usually was somewhere between 40 and 50 grand a year, decided not to renew their contract this year. And then half of my money came from Writer MBA. And so in that time, I've lost, and then a significant portion, how Wannabe Press income is calculated is if I pay out a debit for the conference or something, and then I get repaid, then I count it as revenue and then expenses. And so I'm talking about revenue. And so I would also get money as repayment from Writer MBA, which was about another 50 grand or so, which means in the past 6 months, I have gone from a $400,000 company to a $100,000 company, which is roughly where I was before. Before Writer MBA, I'd never made more than $135,000 in a year. And so those two events drop me back down to 25% of my revenue. And I know that's if you were making 50 grand back from Writer, but that's just how my accounting is weird. That's how it works. That's why I say revenue and not income. My income has always been about 22% of my revenue. My profit has been roughly 22% of my overall revenue for years. But the most significant thing you can learn from this first part is I didn't make more when I had 4 times more revenue than I did. I didn't take away. It just became 6% instead of 22%. So that was my first learning. I was oh, I made a little bit more, but not 4 times. I wasn't making 80 grand now instead of 20 grand. I was just making moderately or a little bit more. And most of that more was coming from our investments accruing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I fell into a trap that a lot of writers fall into, which is I made 150 grand last year, but I spent 120 grand to make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the 150 grand doesn't pay your mortgage unless you're making 150 grand. You really made 30 grand last year. And we often find writers talking about, oh my God, I made 200 grand last year. But then when you really say, but how much did you really make? And they were 20 or 30 grand. And making 200 grand means 200 grand of people want to give you money. And that is amazing.
It's amazing. And I'm a fan of money goals. And I was just watching Becca Syme talk about the stages of business. And there are stages where there's just significant reinvestment and you try things. And a lot of businesses operate in the red, a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, for years, Amazon was we don't pay taxes because everything is being poured back in the business.
Right.
And so growth periods, I'm in a period where we have been investing so much in growth and I'm okay, but all of this has been failures. I'm ready for the money to come back because when we invested a lot in translations, the money did come from that. And we still benefit from the money today. But obviously we had some $200,000 bills going to translator.
Right.
And but it paid off. So that's good. Recently, a lot of my bets have not paid off. So I felt this.
Same.
Money. Give me the money. No. The point of this is the money for me.
Right. Same. And so I think one of the hardest things to understand is usually people that are in a high growth moment aren't making very much money. because they're probably dropping the price of their books to
Yeah.
like get the most amount of readers in,
Yeah.
or then they're investing a lot in ads. So now they're going from a 4.99 book to like a 99-cent book, and they're spending probably more on ads to make not even as much as they had, or like a little, or like maybe a little bit more. So the number one thing you can do to grow is reduce friction. And the reduction of friction is most easily felt by reducing the money that something costs to negligible or free. And so, like most people that are in high growth are like giving away a lot of free stuff. They're giving away way more than they would normally because they like want the most amount of people to come into their business. And so we always look at people who are like, wow, you hit #1 on Amazon, or like you, and it's like the book I made the least on was the one that hit the USA Today bestseller list still to this day. And
Yeah,
like,
I get that.
yeah, it's that's not uncommon for the first list run. By like the fifth list run, usually that's not the case. But like most people that are in high growth, at least their first high growth moment, are experiencing a painful amount of money that is leaving their account. And this goes all the way to startups. The reason why startups were able to like grow so fast from 2012 to 2023 was because of something called ZIRP, which is zero interest rate percent financing. So like basically they could take money out at 0%. So they just did it, and they were like, well, that's 0%. If my company grows, then it'll be worth more. Like investors or like business people, they don't actually get a salary. They take loans out against the amount of money that their stock is worth, which is why they don't pay any money. So like
they don't get taxed. Yeah, because of the
right.
way. I just want to point out how the emperor has no clothes, and you never know like how the duck looks calm on the water, but the feet are paddling. Like billion-dollar valuated companies, it's like that's a made-up number, guys.
Right.
And like you said, I think it's okay if you're in a launch and it's really important to you and you're underwater, you're in the red. We're not judging that. It's just if you're on the outside looking in and you're like, well, she's hitting #1, and that might be the launch that she makes no money on, whereas her quieter launches are pure profit because she doesn't run ads and just uses her list. And you're hoping that those big moments of really trying to get massive more people in the top of funnel with a really big launch, they can lead to more audience, but it's the profit comes from them buying your other books that no one sees in the top 100, but those are the most profitable books, and that's okay. That's okay. Right. But we're judging ourselves, and I don't think we need to be judging ourselves. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, and I think that like most of the most successful authors and just business owners that I know are like running businesses that you have never hear about. Like I have clients all the time when I look up their books, I'm like, oh, wow, this has 10,000 reviews. Like I've never heard of this book or this series or like whatever. And they're just like quietly doing this thing. And like they already, maybe they had their growth moment 10 years ago and they're at the place that they are. And like, that's amazing. But like, yeah, we tend to look at these moments of like, oh, I want to be that person. Yeah. And by the time you get to your fifth like USA Today run or something like that, maybe even your third, and you can like do a USA Today run on a full priced book, like we no longer like those people are actually like making money on those launches because they've already invested so much into the series or into the revenue that like they don't need to drop their price to 99 cents or like whatever other stuff they have to do.
Yeah. And it's a groundswell of 10 years work to build the audience that will all go out and buy it in that week where you hit the list or whatever, the first couple of weeks. And nobody sees the 10 years of work. Nobody sees the way you ran your influencer team. No one sees how many times you send a newsletter and how dedicated you were for decades building that newsletter. Like people don't see that. And anyway, it's
it's a perfect example of this because I get emails all the time from comic book writers who I came up with. And they're like, we're barely at our goal. We haven't reached our Kickstarter goal. Kickstarter is a big thing in comics. If you don't know, like it's like the revenue generating thing in comics is Kickstarter, as
Yeah.
opposed to it being like an add-on or like a accelerator for books. It like really is like the core business is in Kickstarter. And so they're emailing me saying my book's not going to fund.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but we came in together.
Yeah.
What do you mean your book's not going to fund? I've watched this. Like, there's no way that you shouldn't have 5, 10,000 people on your email list at least. Like be able to, and it's not like they're making $100,000. Like they're looking to raise like $5,000, and they're barely able to like get there. Or they're like, and I'm like, I I don't I'm not above groveling. I've done it before, but I do very, very little. Like I think it's like the absolute last resort. And I get emails from people every 3 to 6 months with the same message. And I'm like, what is the difference? And the difference that I see from talking to them is like my day one, I started building an email list. I
Yeah.
start like building like connections. I started doing collaborations, started looking for ways to grow, and they always put it off. And they put it off now still. They still aren't doing that. Or I used to do like builders for people, and I would send them like their list of 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 emails. And then because I was on it, I would see how many people emailed, and it was zero. It was like, or like one person, or like maybe two people, and like out of 30 would like send any emails.
Advice if you're listening. If you're new, set up your email. I use MailerLite. Set up your newsletter. I did it early on in my career. Is the best thing I ever did. I have a free like how to talk to your newsletter guide. It's called the One Page Book Marketing Guide, and it's called that to sound clickbaity. It's all about your newsletter. And then I'm running my book marketing boot camp again in July, and I'll probably run it again in January. So look for the book marketing boot camp in the Millionaire Author Mastermind, etc. But we talk about building out this system because emails are a system that will pay you forever. So back to you, Russ.
Well, and I think that the thing that people don't understand about newsletters is that like to go back to the money systems that we were talking about, like newsletters, if you think about them as like, oh, I'm going to make money now, or like this newsletter is going to provide money for me now. Something like that. They're like, well, I could just do a TikTok or like whatever and make the same amount of money from a TikTok store. The difference is every email you send then can be added to automation sequences, or like you can use them continuously. Whereas like a TikTok is only as good as the next 6 hours or 2 weeks or like whatever that amount of time is depending on what it is. Whereas like, yes, if you're sending an email and like, well, I'm judging this like a TikTok, then you're not building leverage. But like, if you are thinking, oh, well, every email I send during a Kickstarter campaign can then be put into an automation sequence that can be, I haven't touched for like years now since I ended that series. All of this stuff becomes easier. And I don't think necessarily it's the newsletter thing that is essential. I think it is essential to have a discovery engine, monetization engine, and then a product and an audience. And like you have those four things and like you have a business. But like people are like, I'm going to focus on the product and the audience that comes. I talked to somebody in multiple last couple of weeks that were like, oh, I use social media to talk to my existing audience. And I was like, but why? Like, why are you like social media is for discovery mostly. Yeah. Like you should not be on TikTok talking to people that subscribe to you on TikTok because that's not how TikTok works.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. Discovery is top of funnel and then monetization. And then going deeper, I've been really focused on building an influencer team. So allowing readers to come even closer. And, I have people who are willing to post for me and I'm going to give them more goodies. I'm going to give them really beautiful additions and some art. And we're all it's going to be the Lisa Vino villainy. And we're going to be villains together in our little Discord. And I'm thinking this is going to be part of my funnel. And I've been missing this part of my business. And I see really bigger authors like Catherine Cowles doing it really, really well. So I'm like, well, I can add this. But what did I do? I went to my existing newsletter and said, hey, is anyone a book talker or an Instagrammer? And you love doing bookish content? I'd love you to come closer. I'd love you to come further. If not, fine, stay on this list. I got a freebie for you today. I got a new release on July 24th, etc. But I'm able to build it out because I have a newsletter. And again, yeah, using social media for discovery and then giving people a place to go. And that was the newsletter. And now I have an even deeper place for people to go, which is the Discord. And I have a Facebook group, but Facebook group is dead and I don't like it. So I got Discord, but I can pivot because, yeah, I have that newsletter and I can tell people show up on TikTok, show up on Facebook, show up on Discord. And there's just way more chance that people will see that message versus me just putting it up on TikTok and hoping to go viral and hoping to hit my existing audience, which you can't guarantee. That's why my Facebook group is dead. They won't show my posts to my existing audience. But luckily, most of those ladies are on my newsletter or were at one point and can be so again. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think what happens is so often we're like, but what is the goal? Is the goal to have a business? Is the goal to have a TikTok that goes viral today? And like most of the content that is out there is about having a TikTok that goes viral today. So like people are like, oh, this is the thing that's important. But like those people have like built the systems behind those things to make them work. And it's not that like we have an author stack TikTok. My assistant is like, whenever she doesn't have any work to do, I'm like, just like work on one of the social media things. I don't really care. Like, it's just a thing that like you can do, test, figure out what works well for my existing content and do that. But I think it's brilliant. I think that's great because you are a forest. And so if an influencer teams and ambassador marketing is like one of your keys to victory. So like but for like other ecosystems, that might not be your best path to victory. Like maybe doing content marketing isn't your best key to victory if you are a desert, because you'll have to change your content so much over time that like relying on content marketing just to like change your brand every 6 months with whatever series you're writing is like not a good idea. Or like maybe content marketing is not great if you're a tundra because you're so focused on these like little bursts of energy, and content marketing is like little drips of stuff. So it really depends on like what your important thing. But there is no doubt that while I was watching Monica work, I was watching all of these little spiders that you put out like 10 years ago continue to bring in like little things back over time, and allowed her to be much chiller than maybe someone in the position we were in like should have been, which was like, I mean, I in December I thought I would have to liquidate at least $50,000 of like my investments to pay for this conference. Okay. Ended up, so I don't remember how openly I've been talking about this on the podcast. I talk about it openly outside the podcast, but like it was bleak. Yeah. And then we had a bunch of systems happen. We had Sarah Cannon. We used a partnership that because Sarah Cannon is one of our dear friends to like make this. We knew that Sarah wanted to have an in-person event, and we had this space for her to have this in-person event. So we asked her if she wanted to come, and that brought in revenue. We also used the fact that like we had a good relationship with sponsors to like cover a lot of that gap. And we had like some people show up early. So it ended up like we used multiple strategies that we already had existing. Like we had an AI event with Future Fiction Academy, who were already sponsors, who gave us some money for like the room, and like all of these things ended up building up to like, oh, well, I use some aquatic strategies. We use some content marketing grassland strategies. We use these things to close that gap. But like when you're over 50% underwater on a conference that has a $200,000 budget in like 2-3 months before the conference, it's very tough to like, and especially then a month later to like lose a $40,000 to $50,000 client who I was kind of funneling money and using this to funnel like our growth previously. And last year I took like $50,000 that we had and that I had, and I like used it to like to like grow the newsletter from like 10,000 to 20,000 to like 50,000 where it is now.
Yeah.
All of those things are just like one, two, three huge things that like were blows. And then in March of this year, Wyoming emailed us to say that our registered agent was no longer active, and so they were dissolving our company. So like this was a week before the conference. Like they were like, "We're dissolving your company." Like in the following month, and which is what precipitated then having the conference. We just broke even barely. We had this Kickstarter that we did, which was like the last, like hopefully that would be the last money that we may need, and ended up being like we actually got paid from that Kickstarter, and that's great. Like, but that stuff is what like precipitated us being like, okay, we just barely squeaked out this conference by the skin of our teeth, and like we have a little money in the bank, and the state of Wyoming is clearly like a sign from the universe saying like, okay, stop now. You have somehow pulled this off to like not be massively underwater in debt to every human that you know for like the next 5 years, or like draining your bank accounts to like pay for this conference. So like you have like we sat there and we're like, do we want to do this conference again? And we just like couldn't find a way to do like it again and have it. The problem with Writer MBA is it kind of I don't want to say leech, but it pulled attention away from our solo companies.
Yeah.
So like we were like, oh, we have 3 companies now instead of 1 company each. And like we had to coordinate launches. It was like not great. So we were like, okay, well, like probably we're not doing this conference again. If we're not doing this conference again and we don't want to do more course launches, like what is even this thing that we have?
Yeah.
So we then closed that account. We closed all of that stuff. And then I spent the following month like resetting up everyone. And this is like, I believe very highly in customer experience. And so like I wanted to make sure everybody felt cared for. So we like took our Teachable account and we brought some courses to Substack on different accounts, and we started doing these things. I got a new account on Thrivecart Learn, and we moved people there. We did all of these things so that people felt supported, so that even though it was the end of the company, we didn't think of it as the end of our customer base. Like, so we wanted to make sure that if people felt supported, even in the worst times, like we ended the company and we still thought of them, that like when we were launching a new thing, that like they would come back for that like new thing. And I've burned down so many things now that I can say pretty definitively that if you show care in how you end something, very few people will care the next time you launch it. It's when you move on to the next thing without showing care to the previous thing that like you start losing audiences in droves. So this is just like a backstory to the fact that like my money situation has been pretty much in flux all year. And then at the end of this whole thing, I went to Prague and Vienna for 2 weeks, which is not a cheap thing to do. And so I was like, come July, I will know how bad this whole first half of the year was. And I know I said in my email, but do you remember what I told you in the email? What the plus minus is?
I remember you're okay financially and you're up.
Okay, so I am up. Do you want to guess how much up we are, or we were on 2 days ago?
You said 75,000.
Correct. $75,000 personally in our accounts that I thought we would start this account down $50,000. And we ended up, and at one point we were neutral with our investments this year, like in March. So it looked really bleak there. But like in the ensuing few months, like we are currently at this moment, assuming we don't like do something to destroy the stock market again, like up a last year, to give you some context, we were up like $128,000 at the end of last year. So like this is on pace to do better than previous year, even though it's been chaos.
First of all, I'm so relieved. I really want everyone to be chill and fine. And it sounds like you guys can buy dog food, and I'm so happy. And it sounds like you even are building wealth for the future. And that makes me so happy. So I think that we've talked about making moves in your business and being able to survive them. And you've survived and now even thrived. And that's great. I think that's something to celebrate. And I hope you had a great time in Prague and Vienna because, yeah.
Yes, looking at my investment accounts while I was there, being like, I can actually I bought this like little, I went so crazy. I bought this little like puppet. I have so many things. Oh, this is one for you, Lee. You'll love this one. So this is a draft I got at an apothecary. It is Liquid Health. It's from it's a recipe from like the 1300s. It's still the same as it was today, and you don't have to drink it. You just have to have it around you, and it will provide like liquid happiness. Happiness, not health.
Oh, I love that. That is so fun. I love these Gothic touches. Prague is one of my favorite cities. I've only been once. I'd love to go back with my husband and my kids.
Yes.
And check it out. Yeah, my favorite European city was Rome, Edinburgh, and Prague. And brought my husband to Edinburgh. So it's time to go to the other two places.
Amazing.
But I'm so glad you are solvent because you live to fight another day.
Yes. And that's publishing.
Yeah. And Becca Syme was like, only you can take yourself off the board. If you say, oh, my launch failed, therefore I will quit writing forever, that's a you decision. That isn't, right. I mean, because so many of us have published something and it objectively is a failure. And we're like, this was great. You know, I had 3 readers and I got 2 more on my ARC team. And I'm going to move forward because I'm so happy. So it is about happiness and it is about mental health and deciding to continue. So it sounds like you're deciding to continue. Is there anything you're excited about in the future?
Oh, I mean, for sure. Before I talk about that, like I do want to just say like this was not always the case. But I have no idea how we were okay. Like, if I did the math, we should be like down a huge number, and we are not down that huge number. So like, what I know is like there was like some consulting stuff that came in, and then like there was some some Substack did some, and then like we did a launch and it brought some in, and like, but like because like I do some launches with partnerships, I had to then pay out a bunch of money at a launch. So like there was like money was coming in, money was coming out. Like literally, I felt like in June, like things were a disaster. I was down to the lowest amount I've ever been in my publishing business in my account. So like not ever. Clearly, at one point the account was 0, but like since the pandemic, it has not been below like 20 grand, and like it was like right about to be that way. Then we had the Kickstarter, and obviously that helped. But like the Kickstarter differential that I ended up with, and how much I should have ended up with based on that differential, were like different. And so I think what's really important in all of this, I think, is that like you need to have systems that bring in money reliably, even if you don't necessarily know how that money is coming to you. I feel that way about a lot of retailers. I just am like, oh, $500 this month. Great. $200 the next month. I don't. Okay, amazing.
Yeah, it all counts. It all counts. I never forget talking to Ennis Johnson. She's like, I want to make 6 figures or 10,000 a month or something. I was like, okay. And she said, yeah, I'm right here on Amazon. And I was like, oh, but what about all your other accounts on Drafted Digital? She used Drafted Digital to go wide. She's like, oh, I don't count those. I was like, it all counts, baby. She went
Yeah.
and calculated and she's like, oh, I'm over six figures, or I
Yeah.
will be six figures in December for the year. And I do think that that isn't as fun and as sexy as getting like a $30,000 payout from Amazon or
Right.
whatever, but it all counts. And what you have done successfully is you created assets over the past couple decades or whatever. When you started writing, you created these assets, and they're all going to bring in a little bit. And you also created systems that would continue to pay you with your newsletter, your email list, and you can always use your newsletter to talk about those assets. And you've been in a growth phase to build the newsletter and to bring in more top of funnel. But in the meantime, those systems are working. And because it isn't like you got paid an hourly wage to sell a widget in 2015. It's like you created something that maybe didn't pay you a ton, but it will pay you a little bit every year. And so just by writing books, we're already moving into a system that allows for passive income. And then you have investments. And the other thing that I do want to mention is when you're able to save and budget and live lean and mean, that is a superpower. My sister has this because she never expected to make a lot of money. And she was able to save so much money that now that she's bringing in more money and she's in a more comfortable place in life, she's maxing out her retirement accounts. And I was like, you're going to be fine. You're going to build wealth. And right. It's because you have this habit. And not only that, but you're going to build wealth so much faster because she needs a lot less to live on. Now, I don't want her to live on a bare bones budget. I don't want her to be put in that position, but she could do it. And knowing she can do it actually reduces her stress. And my husband and I, we do spend quite a bit, but we know we can eat beans and rice. We know we can figure out ways, shop at Goodwill. Like there are thrifty habits that we have that we can cut our expenses down. And we talk about this a lot because there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. So we're literally like, okay, if there's an apocalypse, what do we do? If there's, a hurricane, okay, we have water saved. That will also be good for the apocalypse. And we've built some of this in and just knowing that we can pivot and very quickly spend nothing is another part of this. So I have systems that pay me. I am making products that will pay me for the rest of my life and pay my children. And I can save the money and I'm comfortable having the money and I'm comfortable not spending money.
Right.
And find is what.
And you also, to talk about the thing that you asked about, like the thing that I'm excited about, like I have spent the last 5 years working with Monica and other authors at some point. And like the thing that I feel is missing is the ability, like people seem to either think that they can invest in their happiness or invest in their business. And like these are two separate things. So I have a program coming out in a couple of weeks called Hapitalist, which is a membership. It's a revolving year-long membership. I specifically wanted to keep it at a price that you could continue with it every year in perpetuity, like without it eating away at your thought process to do so. So it's a $300 a year. And the idea is we are going to do a thing called the Happy Compass, where we plot every quarter the 4 things that we are moving towards. H is for a heart, which is like the projects. A is for audience. P is your priority, and then I is your income. We set those in combination with workbooks that are going to help you prioritize, and then the community all together that is all going to be focused on. Do you know what a public benefit corporation is? Okay, so a public benefit corporation is one that is still, it's like a regular corporation, but they can have values that are not just make the most money.
Right.
So the idea is we invest in our business, we make sure that we have enough. We also invest in our happiness and the joy and having time. So we are building leveraged assets that can allow us to do more doing less so that we can have more to do the things that we actually care about. But that both of these things are important simultaneously. And we don't spend 5 years burning out and then 5 years recovering. We like make these little, I call them, if you've ever heard of profit first, so that it's built around this thing that I talk about as energy first, which is like we take we reserve 10% of our energy in the bank at any time that we can draw on if we need to, but we always keep that account positive. In the same way, we always keep our bank account positive. And these two things work at the same time together.
That's awesome. I'm really excited about Capitalist, and also that you closed the door on a bunch of things, a bunch of projects, and now new opportunities you have space for them. And
Yes.
that's really exciting. I think that's the way to do it, is you finish up the projects however they end, and choosing to end them can be difficult, but there's so much opportunity that it leads to. So,
And space.
yeah, saying no to things, closing down projects. I'm friends with all my co-writers and I still love having them in my life and sprinting with them, but we're not co-writing anymore. I
Right.
have, I'm only co-writing with Renee at this point because that's what's serving us. And the other relationships, we closed out the series and we were like, okay, now it's time to go on different directions, but I'll see you on Zoom for sprints.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be a disaster ending. It doesn't have to be a bad divorce. It can be
Right.
an amicable one.
And I love Monica. I love what we built in Writer MBA, but like things serve you until they don't. And to go back to the armor comment we talked about, maybe off air, but like it's been so long now. It's this idea that like we keep putting on armor to protect ourselves from things. And we take on projects, we take on responsibilities, we take on all of these things. And at one point, they may have served us. Maybe they didn't, but like at one point, we thought that we should take it on for whatever reason, but like over time they drag us down. And the things that I felt this way starting in about November of last year. I was like, oh, I don't feel lifted up by Writer MBA anymore. Like I feel like not necessarily dragged down, but that like they were projects I wanted to do or things I wanted to explore or like just like pivots I wanted to make. Like Capitalist was starting to like form in my mind, and I couldn't do it. Like it became impossible to do these things while not knowing whether we're going to have another conference. I will also say that I spent the last few months writing so many books to like, because like what happened when we took Writer MBA down was we also took down all the books.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I have all this content. So I rewrote the author ecosystems book. I wrote a Kickstarter book that my editor is editing. I wrote a direct sales book. So it's called Direct Sales Strategy for Authors. So I thought I was going to go from like 3 books to 6 books this year in the Author Stack series, but it's going to be 10 books. And I'm going to do a Kickstarter later this year, but I'm most excited in the future to not have so many Kickstarters and not have so many launches and be able to do what people have been telling me to do all of this time, which is reinvest in launching the same program again and again and again for at least a year and a half. They say until you launch something 7 times, you shouldn't launch a second program. And we have not like done that at Writer MBA. We tend to write one thing, do one thing, and then it's like the next thing. But like that is like I've found that and the reason I can do that is because the author stack has showed me that like if you talk about something for 2 years, the Kickstarter book, all of the author ecosystems, just like it starts paying off over time. And I've been lucky enough, savvy enough or whatever to have enough. Like I've lived in a world of publishing where if you can live to fight the next day, you win. And so I've never lost. I've always broken even on every book I've ever published, which is like I haven't made a lot from a lot of those books, but I've made at least enough to like survive operationally and like and put a little bit of money and max out my IRA, which I've been doing for a long time. And we've been able to max out our 401k for like most of my wife's career. So like, and finally it's like paying off now that we have a new advisor. But like I have the ability to after seeing that writer and author spec makes like 20 grand a year already. So it's like, well, 20 grand is like worth doing something with. Like, can I make that 20 grand, like 50 grand or 100 grand this year? Like, I don't, my goal has always been 100 grand of profit. Like, I've
Yeah.
not made it that way, but like, I feel like if I continue on the 400,000 road thing and have a 20% profit, that's like finally like 100 grand. So I'm trying to just like not make that 400 grand and just make that 100 grand more profitable so that I can do the things that I want to do, which is like travel more and do like retreats in places. I talked to friends in like Hungary and friends in Austria while I was away to like do like little events there with them. But like just I I find the happiest people are the ones that understand when they have enough and like then they don't worry about having the more than like they oftentimes do have a ridiculously more.
But they had enough before they had the more.
Right. And
They were able to be chill and unbothered. And I will say one more thing as we're kind of coming to a close. Your ability to hold the space for your emotion, even the negative ones, probably allowed you to go through such disappointment and the grief and the anger and the stages of shutting a business down, that the sad feelings, the
right.
nasty feelings. But you were like, I'm not going to run from that. I'm going to shut this down and it'll suck and I'll feel it for 5 minutes and then I'm going to go to Prague. And and now there's a clear runway, so much you could be doing, but you're not dragging the emotions you avoided as a burden.
Right. Yeah, and that is one of the things that I always tell people about Kickstarter, right? It's like have the book done before you launch the campaign so that you don't have to go back and like be dragging it along for like a year or 2 years or all of this time. Like, yes, you can launch a campaign or launch a thing before it's ready, but like then you will have to continue to think about it once it's not done and it will over time like it will just eat. I've seen so many of my friends like 5 years from a Kickstarter and they like haven't delivered everything and it's like you really for me I have to like flush it out. I'm willing to do the hard thing but I have to be done when the hard thing is done, like setting a I set like 6 month, 2 year, whatever that threshold is. And it's like, okay, I'm willing to do this thing for X amount of time. And then it has to be over or I continue on.
Yeah.
But I do want to, since we've been covered Capitalist, I do want to also talk about your new thing that you're doing, or not new thing, but the boot
Yeah.
camps that you're doing.
I've run the boot camp a couple times, twice officially, but I ran it for my friends a couple times to see if I wanted to do it for the public. So if you're an author and you have a couple of books out and you're pretty confident with the publishing process and also you have a mailing list, ideally, then you're welcome to come join the boot camp. A new author joined and realized it wasn't for her because she wasn't really willing to be thrown into the deep end. And for me, I'm like, oh, people are already familiar with these concepts, right? But no. So if you're a new author, I might have an offering for you later. But if you are established and you just want to be marketing your books more and you want to talk about what's working in the market today, but also create those systems that will pay you over time, you're welcome to join the Book Marketing Bootcamp. I'm running it July 21st to July 25th to 2025. And I'm going to run it again in January. And every time I run it, if you joined, you're in. You get access to all future boot camps. So you're welcome to join in July. You're welcome to join in the future, but then you're able to come to every single boot camp. You don't have to re-sign up every time. So we have some cool speakers coming. We have Theodore Taylor going to talk to us about crafting seven-figure fiction. We have Kit Strange going to talk about the emotional journey using the example of Taylor Swift. and her concert experience, which I think is really interesting. That's going to be next week. So you can join now if you want to catch that. Otherwise, it'll be recorded. And then Nick Eriks is going to talk about evergreen Facebook ads. So you can show up live to those talks and ask questions, or you can just get the recording. And all of it is recorded. And now there's a June boot camp in there. We'll record the July boot camp. And then in January, you can go back to all those videos if you want, and it'll just continue to build. And I think that I will launch it 7 times and see how it goes, Russell.
Amazing. I love it.
Fun.
I think you should join both programs if you're listening. They're both great.
Join Capitalist. I have my How to Thrive as a Writer in a Capitalist Dystopia book right here, like my writer safety blanket. And then I will get the link to the boot camp for Adriel to put into our show notes.
Amazing. And I think I will leave with just one thing, which is I used to teach how to take a punch and get knocked down, and how to get up after getting knocked down. And I think that as I've evolved as a writer, the one thing that I've learned is it's better to learn how to not get knocked down in the first place.
Okay.
Like, you will get punched still, but like if you can just stay up, or have it a glancing blow instead of like hit direct, like the things that you will still get knocked like back. But if you cannot get knocked down and you can just keep going, then like you don't have to expend all of the energy from getting up off the floor. And so as you're going about like, and part of that comes from like this is all like the mental thing. It's not that the punch doesn't hurt. It's that like you have built the resilience to not get knocked down from it, either because you've seen it 100 times, because you've studied and when they throw a punch, like you can like either like deflect part of it, or like you can like put somewhere that like gives you better balance. But like, it's not that the events will be any less surprising, but like they will be less devastating, which are like, I was surprised when I lost my camera. It was a very surprising event in my life, but like, it wasn't devastating to me. I still was able to internalize it, do a little bit of deep breathing, and then like enjoy Bratislava and just say, well, these two humans are like dope. Like, I could either break down this whole day and force us to go back on my mom's one day in my grandmother's home country, or I could just like try and have the best thing. And I learned something really recently that was I think is relevant here, which is, did you know that if you go into a movie expecting to enjoy it, you will? Like if you go into an event expecting to like just with the mindset, I'm going to enjoy this.
It will filter for enjoyment. Yeah,
right, exactly.
I think that rings true. I'd like to read more about that. That's really interesting. And yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any final words before we get out of here?
I just thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you for everyone who lets us know that you listen to this podcast. Really is affirming for us, because we're not sure and we want to put something of value out in the world. But thank you for listening and being on this journey. And I hope if you're feeling like a failure, and if you're really, going through the trials right now, that you'll reach out and or listen to some of our podcasts and see if they'll help lift you up, because we really want to do that. So thank you.
I love it. Okay. And go to sixfigureauthorexperiment.com and subscribe, do whatever things you got to do to get the next episode. And bye, Lee. It was great again.
Thank you, Russell.
See you next time.
Till next time.
Thanks for listening. For more, head on over to sixfigureauthorexperiment.com for archive access, resources, and more. We'll see you next time.